Moonlight, that's what her name meant, Khutulun. In the language of the steppe, where the sky stretches forever and the grass bends to ancient wind, her name was Moonlight. But she was not soft, she was not fragile, she was undefeated. Imagine this, the year is 1280. A princess stands in the center of a wrestling circle. Around her, 10,000 eyes watch in silence. Across from her, a prince, wealthy, trained, confident. He has traveled across mountains to be here. He has brought 100 horses as his wager, because that is the price of her hand in marriage. Defeat her, and she becomes his wife. Lose, and the horses become hers. He smiles, she does not. The match begins. 30 seconds later, he is on the ground. She walks away. Another herd was added to her collection. Another legend whispered across the empire. By the time the stories reached Europe, the number had grown impossible. 1,000 men, 1,000 matches, not a single defeat. Some said she was blessed by Tengri, the eternal blue sky. Others said she was cursed, that no woman should be so strong. Her father said she was his greatest warrior. Her brothers said she threatened the throne. History said almost nothing. Until now. This is the story of Khutulun, the wrestler princess, the undefeated daughter of the steppe, the woman who refused to be conquered, not by man, not by tradition, not by time. Her moonlight still falls. If you listen closely enough, you can hear the horses. The year is 1260, Central Asia, a land without borders, without walls, without the weight of stone cities pressing down on the earth. Here, the world moves. Tents rise and fall with the seasons. Herds drift like clouds across grassland that stretches beyond sight. The Mongol Empire, vast, unstoppable, still expanding, governs half the known world. But in the western reaches, where the Silk Road winds through mountain passes and the Chinese border holds firm, there is a different kind of kingdom. Kaidu Khan rules here. Cousin to Kublai, the great Khan in the east. But Kaidu does not bend the knee. He holds his territory with the old ways, nomadic, fierce, independent. And among his many children, 14 sons and 1 daughter, there is Khutulun, Moonlight. From the beginning, she is different. Not in the way daughters are meant to be different. Not quieter or gentler or more carefully raised. She is different because she refuses to be separate. At 5 years old, she rides. At 8, she shoots. At 10, she wrestles her brothers in the dust outside their gur, the felt tent that is home, that moves when the seasons turn. She does not lose often. Her father watches, he does not stop her. In Mongol culture, strength is sacred. It does not matter if you are born male or female. What matters is whether you can survive the steppe, whether you can ride for days without rest, whether you can pull a bow that weighs as much as a child, whether you can face an enemy on an open plain and not flinch. Khutulun can do all of this. By the time she reaches 15, she is taller than most men, broad-shouldered, strong in the way that comes not from performance but from necessity. She trains every day, wrestling, archery, swordplay, strategy. Her father takes her on campaigns. She rides beside him into battle, not behind, not waiting in camp, beside him. The chroniclers will note this later. Rashid al-Din, the Persian historian, will write that she was her father's companion in every campaign, that no one could throw her, that she would charge into enemy ranks, snatch a prisoner like an eagle taking a hare, and return unharmed. But for now, in these quiet years of her youth, she is simply Khutulun, the daughter who does not sit inside the tent while her brothers train. The girl who smells of horses and sweat and open sky. The young woman who, when she looks at the horizon, sees only freedom. Not yet a legend, not yet undefeated, but already, undeniably, herself. And soon, very soon, the Empire will learn her name. Because a question is coming, the question that changes everything. Who will you marry? Every Mongol daughter eventually faces the same question, even the strongest, even the most beloved. Who will you marry? For Khutulun, the question arrives when she is 20. Her father, Kaidu, is aging. His wars with Kublai Khan continue, border skirmishes, political maneuvering, the endless dance of power between cousins who were once allies. He needs alliances, marriage alliances. His sons can provide some of these connections, but a daughter, a royal daughter, her marriage could secure an entire territory, a treaty, a legacy. This is how empires are built, not just with swords, with bloodlines. Kaidu approaches her one evening after the day's training. The sun is setting over the steppe, painting the grass gold. He does not command, he suggests. There are princes, khans from neighboring territories, strong men, worthy men. She listens. She does not interrupt. When he finishes, she is quiet for a long time. Then she speaks. "Father, I will marry." He exhales. Relief. "But only the man who can defeat me in wrestling." Silence. "And if he cannot, he must pay me 100 horses. Kaidu stares at his daughter. This is not refusal. It is not rebellion. It is something else entirely. A challenge built into a promise. A way to honor both tradition and strength. In Mongol culture, wrestling is sacred. It is one of the 3 manly skills, along with archery and horsemanship, that define nobility. Matches are held at every gathering, every festival, every celebration. There are no weight classes, no divisions, only strength, technique, and will. And Khutulun has never lost. Not to her brothers, not to her father's warriors, not to anyone. Kaidu considers. He knows what this means. If he agrees, she will likely never marry. If he refuses, he loses her respect, and perhaps her loyalty. He is a Khan who values strength above all else. He has raised her to be a warrior. How can he now demand she become something less? He agrees. The word spreads across the empire like wildfire. Khutulun, daughter of Kaidu, will marry the man who defeats her. 100 horses to any who try. At first, it seems like a joke. A princess wrestler? Surely this is some kind of political theater. Surely she will let the right suitor win. But then, the matches begin. The first challenger is a minor chief's son. Young, strong, eager to prove himself. The circle forms. Khutulun steps forward, wearing the traditional wrestling garb. A small vest, open at the chest, loose trousers. Her hair is braided tight. Her expression is calm. The match begins. Within seconds, she has him by the arm. A pivot, a pull, a shift of weight. He hits the ground. Khutulun does not gloat. She simply extends her hand to help him rise, then walks away. 100 horses are led to her herd. The second challenger arrives a week later, then a third, then 10 more. Some are skilled wrestlers. Some are princes with more pride than technique. Some are older, experienced, certain they can use strategy to overcome her youth. None succeed. By the end of the first year, her herd has grown by thousands. The challenges do not stop. Men come from distant Khanates, from Chinese territories, from the edges of the known world. Each one certain he will be different. Each one wrong. Khutulun's reputation grows. Some call her blessed, some call her unnatural. The chroniclers begin to write. Marco Polo, traveling through these lands, will hear the stories and record them, though he will change her name, call her Aijiarn, and marvel at her skill. Rashid al-Din, the great Persian historian, will document her battlefield prowess alongside her wrestling victories. But in the moment, in those years of endless challenges, Khutulun simply does what she has always done. She trains, she fights, she wins. And with every victory, the question grows louder in the empire. Will anyone ever defeat her? Or has she found a way to remain forever free? Her father watches with pride and worry both. Pride, because she is everything he raised her to be. Worry, because he knows what comes next. Power, succession, legacy, and a daughter who has never lost might never stop fighting. To understand what Khutulun accomplished, you must first understand the arena. Mongol wrestling is not theater. It is not performance. It is combat without weapons, pure, unforgiving, ancient. The rules are deceptively simple. 2 wrestlers enter a circle. They wear the traditional zodog, a tight, short-sleeved vest that leaves the chest exposed, and shudug, loose trousers. No shoes, bare feet on the grass, or the sand or the hard-packed earth of the wrestling ground. They grab each other, shoulders, arms, belt, anywhere above the knee. The goal, force any part of your opponent's body to touch the ground. Knee, elbow, shoulder, back. 1 touch, that is all. There are no weight classes, no time limits, no rounds. A match can last 30 seconds or 30 minutes. It ends when someone falls. Technique matters. Leverage matters. But most of all, strength and will. The ability to hold your ground when another human being is using every ounce of force to throw you down. This is what Khutulun mastered. Not just the movements, the spirit of it. By her early 20s, she is a phenomenon. Physically, she is imposing. The chronicles describe her as tall, taller than most men of her time. Broad across the shoulders. Arms thick with muscle earned from years of drawing heavy bows and gripping wrestling opponents. Her hands are calloused. Her stance is wide, balanced, immovable. When she steps into the circle, she does not look like she is performing femininity. She looks like she is ready for war. Because for her, there is no difference. Wrestling is war, just slower, more intimate, more honest. On the battlefield, she is equally formidable. Rashid al-Din writes that she accompanied her father on every military campaign. Not as a symbol, as a warrior. She would ride into enemy formations, alone, and snatch prisoners from their saddles as if plucking fruit from a tree. The Persian historian describes it with awe. She would ride into the thick of battle, seize a man as a hawk seizes a chicken, and carry him back to her father. Imagine that, the chaos of combat, horses screaming, arrows cutting through smoke and dust, and a woman moving through it all like water through stone, untouchable. Her enemies do not know what to make of her. In many cultures of the time, a woman on the battlefield is unthinkable, an abomination, a sign of desperation. But the Mongols are different. They are pragmatic. If you can fight, you fight. If you can lead, you lead. Gender is secondary to capability, and Khutulun is supremely capable. Her wrestling victories pile up. 100 men, 200, 500. The number becomes difficult to track because she does not refuse any challenge. Every man who brings 100 horses can step into the circle. Rich or poor, young or old, trained or arrogant. She defeats them all. Her herd grows enormous. By some accounts, she owns 10,000 horses. An incomprehensible wealth. Enough to fund armies, enough to buy loyalty, enough to make her, in her own right, one of the most powerful figures in the region. But it is not about the horses, not really. It is about the choice. Every time she wins, she is choosing herself, choosing her freedom, choosing to remain undefined by any man's claim on her. Marco Polo, traveling through Central Asia in the 1270s, hears the stories. He records them in his journals, though, like many European chroniclers, he cannot quite believe what he is hearing. He writes of a princess named Aegiarn. Beautiful, he says, but so strong that no man can overcome her. He describes her challenge, the horses, the matches. He gets some details wrong, as travelers often do, but the essence is true. There is a woman on the steppe, and she has never been defeated. The Mongol wrestlers develop a ritual in her honor. Before each match, they perform the devech, the eagle dance, arms spread wide like wings, a slow circle around the arena. It is a gesture of respect, of readiness, of connection to the sky. Later, centuries later, when Mongolian wrestling becomes formalized, the tradition will continue. But there will be one more element added to the uniform. The vest, the zodog, will remain open-chested, deliberately, to prove that the wrestler is not a woman, because once long ago a woman wrestled, and she could not be beaten. And so the garment itself becomes a memorial, a reminder, a way of saying, we know what happened, we remember. But in Khutulun's time, she needs no memorial. She is alive, present, undefeated. Her father relies on her counsel in matters of war and politics. Her brothers watch her with a mixture of admiration and resentment, because Kaidu is aging, and everyone knows that when he dies, someone must lead. Tradition says it should be a son, but capability says it should be Khutulun. She is the best warrior, the best strategist, the most respected, and she has never, not once, been brought to her knees. The question grows louder with each passing year. What happens when an undefeated woman stands at the edge of a throne? The answer, when it comes, will break her heart, but not her spirit, never her spirit, because some things cannot be wrestled into submission, not by strength, not by tradition, not even by love. The year is 1280. Khutulun is now 30 years old. She has been wrestling challengers for a decade. Her herd numbers in the thousands. Her reputation spans continents. And still, she remains unmarried. Her father is troubled, not because he doubts her strength, but because he sees the future closing in. He is nearly 70. His wars with Kublai Khan have exhausted the kingdom's resources. He needs Khutulun beside him, not just as a warrior, but as a symbol of continuity, of legacy. He wants her to succeed him. But the Khans and nobles resist. A woman cannot rule, they say. It is unprecedented. It violates tradition. Kaidu argues. He points to her victories, her wisdom, her loyalty. But the resistance grows. And then, quietly, other rumors begin. Whispers that spread like poison through the camps. Why does she refuse every man? Why does she stay so close to her father? What kind of daughter refuses marriage for so long? The implication is ugly, unthinkable, incestuous. It is not true, but truth and rumor do not always travel the same path. The whispers damage her. They damage Kaidu, and they make the question of succession even more dangerous. Into this tension arrives a prince. His name is lost to history, but his wealth is not. He comes from a distant Khanate, powerful, ambitious, and he brings a wager unlike any Khutulun has seen. 1,000 horses. 10 times the usual price. The entire empire takes notice. This is not just a challenge. This is a statement. A prince willing to risk such wealth is either extraordinarily confident or extraordinarily desperate for the alliance that marriage to Khutulun would bring. The match is arranged. The circle is drawn in the center of Kaidu's camp. Thousands gather. Nobles from across the region. Warriors, merchants, families who have traveled for weeks just to witness this, because everyone knows this might be the match, the one where Khutulun finally falls. Kaidu watches from his seat. Beside him, his wife, Khutulun's mother, leans close. She whispers something. He nods. Then he calls Khutulun to him. The crowd grows quiet. Father and daughter speak in low voices. No one can hear the words, but everyone understands the weight of the moment. When Khutulun steps back, her expression is unreadable. The prince enters the circle. He is young, strong, well-trained. He performs the eagle dance with precision. His movements are confident. When he looks at Khutulun, there is no mockery in his eyes, only focus. He knows who she is, what she has done. He is not here to humiliate her. He is here to win. Khutulun steps forward. The match begins. At first, it is even. They circle each other, testing, probing for weakness. He grabs her shoulder. She counters, grips his arm. They push. Neither gives ground. The crowd holds its breath. Seconds stretch into minutes. Sweat begins to form. Muscles strain. This is not like the other matches. This prince knows what he is doing. He shifts his weight suddenly, a feint, and nearly catches her off balance. Nearly. She recovers, pivots. Now she has his belt. He twists free, they reset. Again they grapple. Again, neither falls. 5 minutes pass. 10. The sun beats down. Dust rises around their feet. Khutulun's father watches. His face is stone, but his hands grip the arms of his chair, because he knows what he asked of her. Before the match, in that whispered conversation, he made a request. Let him win. Not because the prince deserves it, not because she is weaker, but because the empire needs this marriage, because the rumors need to stop, because she is his daughter, and he loves her, and he wants her to have a life beyond the wrestling circle, beyond the endless challenges, beyond the weight of being undefeated. He asked her to lose, for him, for the family, for peace, and she listened. She did not agree. She did not refuse. She simply listened. Now, in the circle, the prince makes his move. A strong pull, a sweep of the leg. Khutulun stumbles. The crowd gasps. She is off balance, falling. This is it. The moment everyone has been waiting for. The end of the legend. And then, she doesn't fall. At the last possible instant, she shifts her weight, plants her foot, uses his momentum against him, and throws him. Hard. He hits the ground with a sound like thunder. Silence. Absolute silence. Then, slowly, the crowd erupts, cheering, shouting, because they have just witnessed something impossible. Not the victory, the choice. Khutulun stands over the prince. She extends her hand, helps him to his feet. He is breathing hard. Stunned, he meets her eyes. In that moment, he understands. She could have lost. She chose not to. Marco Polo, when he later recounts this story, will write that she threw the prince valiantly on the palace pavement. He will note that her parents had urged her to let him win, that she refused, that she walked away with 1,000 more horses. But what he cannot capture, what no chronicle can fully express, is what it cost her. That night, after the celebrations, Khutulun sits alone. Her father does not speak to her. Her mother weeps quietly in their tent. The rumors, instead of fading, grow worse. And Khutulun realizes something terrible. She can defeat any man in the circle, but she cannot defeat what they say about her. She cannot wrestle tradition to the ground. She cannot throw rumor and fear and the weight of expectation. Some battles cannot be won by strength alone. And so, eventually, she makes a different choice. She is married, not the prince, not any man who challenged her. She chooses her own husband, a man named Gazan, a man she never had to wrestle, a man who understands that some victories are won by surrender, and some surrenders are their own kind of victory. Khutulun died in 1306. She is 46 years old. The circumstances are unclear. Some sources suggest illness. Others hint at something darker. Assassination, perhaps, by those who feared her influence. What is certain is this. With her death, something breaks in her father's kingdom. Kaidu himself dies just 2 years later. The territory he held against Kublai Khan for decades begins to crumble. His sons fight among themselves. The succession Khutulun could have secured, and the legacy she could have carried forward, dissolves into chaos. Within a generation, the Western Khanate is absorbed back into the larger empire. The independent spirit of the steppe is tamed, and Khutulun's name begins to fade, but not everywhere, not completely. In Mongolia, the wrestlers remember. The tradition continues. The eagle dance, the open-chested vest, the sacred circle. And embedded in that tradition is a silent acknowledgement. The zodog, the wrestling vest that exposes the chest, is worn to prove the wrestler is male. Because once a woman entered the circle, and she could not be defeated. The garment itself becomes a kind of monument, a way of saying, this happened. We remember, we will not forget. But in the West, the story transforms. It travels through trade routes and court gossip. It reaches Europe, twisted, romanticized, made safe. In the 18th century, an Italian playwright named Carlo Gozzi hears a version of Khutulun's tale. He writes a play, Turandot, a princess who sets impossible challenges for her suitors. But in his version, she is cruel, cold, a riddle maker who executes the men who fail. Until, of course, a prince arrives who is clever enough to win her, and she is tamed, transformed by love, made soft. Later, Puccini turns it into an opera. Nessun dorma, none shall sleep. The prince's aria becomes one of the most famous pieces of music in the world. But the princess in the opera is not Khutulun. She is a fantasy, a cautionary tale about female power that must be conquered. The real story, the one where the woman chooses, where she remains undefeated, where she wrestles on her own terms until the very end, that story is buried, lost, forgotten, until scholars begin to dig, until historians revisit the Persian chronicles and Marco Polo's accounts, until the name Khutulun resurfaces from the dust of centuries, and people begin to ask, who was she really? Not the opera princess, not the cruel riddle maker, but the actual woman. The warrior who rode into battle beside her father. The wrestler who never lost. The daughter who defied tradition not out of cruelty, but out of an unshakable belief in her own worth. What her story reveals is this: history is written by those who survive, and survival, for women, often means compromise. Khutulun compromised in the end. She married. She stepped back from the succession. She allowed her brothers to inherit what she could have claimed. But even in compromise, she did not break. She chose her husband. She lived on her terms, and she never, not once, pretended to be weaker than she was. In that, she won something more valuable than any throne. She won herself. Today, in Mongolia, Khutulun is remembered as a hero. Schools are named after her. Statues honor her. Young girls learn her name alongside Genghis Khan's. Wrestling tournaments celebrate her legacy. And every year during Naadam, the great festival of Mongolian culture, thousands gather to watch wrestling matches that echo the ones she fought 7 centuries ago. The wrestlers still perform the eagle dance. They still wear the open-chested vest, and whether they know it or not, they are performing a ritual of remembrance for a woman who refused to fall, for a princess who understood that strength is not just physical. It is the courage to stand alone, to be misunderstood, to be whispered about, feared, resented, and still to walk into the circle with your head high. Khutulun's moonlight does not fade. It simply moves across the sky, constant, eternal. A reminder that some legacies cannot be wrestled down. Some names cannot be erased. And some women, no matter how much history tries to diminish them, romanticize them, or forget them entirely, remain undefeated. Return with me now to the steppe, the same grassland where Khutulun once rode, where she trained as a girl, where she stood in the wrestling circle and refused to fall. It looks much the same. The grass still bends to the wind, the sky still stretches impossibly wide. The mountains still hold their ancient silence on the horizon. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear it, the thunder of hooves. 10,000 horses moving as one. Her herd, her wealth, her victory made tangible. They are long gone now, of course, scattered into history, but the land remembers. Every wrestling circle drawn in the dust is an echo of her. Every young girl who picks up a bow, who climbs onto a horse, who refuses to be told what she cannot do, carries a piece of her forward. You do not need to know her name to feel her presence. She is in the tradition, in the ritual, in the quiet defiance of anyone who has ever stood their ground when the world expected them to fall. What does it mean to be undefeated? Not that you never compromise, not that you never bend. Khutulun married in the end. She stepped away from the throne that could have been hers. She made peace with a world that was not ready for her. But undefeated means this: you do not betray yourself. You do not pretend to be smaller than you are. You do not apologize for your strength. And when you step into the circle, whatever circle life draws around you, you meet it with everything you have. Not for glory, not for recognition, but because that is who you are. Khutulun knew this. She carried it in her bones. When she threw that final prince to the ground, the one her parents begged her to lose to, she was not being cruel. She was being honest. And honesty, in a world built on compromise and performance, is its own kind of revolution. The moonlight still falls on the steppe tonight, the same light that gave her her name, soft, steady, illuminating everything it touches. It does not shout, it does not demand, it simply is. And that is enough. Khutulun is gone. Her empire is gone. The challenges, the horses, the wrestling matches, all of it has faded into the realm of story. But the essence remains. The question she asked by simply existing. What if a woman did not need to be conquered? What if strength was not something to be apologized for? What if victory was not about defeating others, but about refusing to defeat yourself? These questions do not have simple answers. They are not meant to. They are meant to linger, to echo, to return to you in quiet moments, when the world feels too heavy and the path forward is unclear. In those moments, remember, there was once a woman on the steppe. She wrestled 1,000 men. She never lost. And her moonlight, even now, even here, even centuries later, still falls. If this story lingers in your thoughts tonight, if you feel the weight of her choices resting quietly in your chest, if you wonder what it would be like to stand in that circle, undefeated, with the whole world watching, then let it stay with you. Let it settle. History is not just a record of what happened. It is a conversation across time, a whisper from the past asking, what will you do with your own strength? What circles will you step into? What will you refuse to surrender? Khutulun cannot answer for you. She can only show you what she did, how she lived, how she chose herself again and again, even when it cost her everything. The steppe holds many more stories like this. Voices that were silenced, names that were forgotten, legacies that were buried under centuries of dust and rewritten histories. But they are still there, waiting. If you listen closely enough, you can hear them. The wind carries them, the grass remembers, and when you are ready, when the noise of the world grows quiet, when you need to remember that strength is not a thing to be hidden or tamed, return here, to the steppe, to the moonlight, to the stories of those who refuse to fall. We will be waiting, with another whisper from history, another forgotten name, another legacy worth remembering. Until then, rest well, and know that somewhere on a windswept plain under an endless sky, the horses still run,